The Galactic Concord's Hall of Diplomacy had never been silent before. The chamber, larger than Earth's oldest cathedrals, was a living monument of peace, with walls made from translucent crystal that resonated with ambient light from a nearby star. Delegates from over 50 species had gathered, their voices normally rising in an endless tide of argument, trade disputes, and accusations. But now, every sound had faded, smothered by tension. At the center of the chamber stood a single human, Commander Daniel Rourke. He wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He was a soldier, a survivor of too many border skirmishes. His uniform was worn, his eyes sharp, and his palms were sweating against his sides. Across from him, on a throne of ivory-like bone, sat Princess Serenya of the Lithari. The Lithari were an ancient and proud species, their empire stretching across 200 star systems. Tall and graceful, with silver-blue skin and eyes like liquid sapphire, they were famed for their culture, their artistry, and their merciless disdain for lesser races. Humanity, newly arrived on the galactic stage, had clashed with them on more than one frontier. Serenya, daughter of the Empress, was here not merely as royalty, but as a symbol of her people's pride. Her gaze had been cold when she'd entered, but now it was harder, like a blade drawn from its sheath. The Concord's council had failed yet again to broker peace. Talks had collapsed. Lithari war fleets massed at the borders. Humanity prepared for a fight it could not win. And then, in desperation, Daniel had spoken out of turn. "If words won't bridge the divide," he said hoarsely, "then let me try something else." The delegate scoffed. The princess narrowed her eyes. And Daniel began to sing. Middle. The song was not in English. Months earlier, while recovering from a shrapnel wound in a border outpost, Daniel had discovered recordings of Lithari music. Theirs was a culture where language and melody intertwined. Every note carried meaning, every rise and fall in tone of phrase, every breath a gesture. Out of curiosity, he had studied it. Out of stubbornness, he had practiced until he could reproduce the sounds with some degree of fidelity. Now, standing before the galaxy, he drew on that hard-earned memory. His voice wavered at first, but then grew stronger, filling the crystalline chamber. The song he chose was not a war anthem, not a defiance. It was a Lithari mourning hymn. The words spoke of stars that died so new ones might be born, of rivers that dried so that others might flow, of the endless cycle of loss and rebirth. It was a song sung for those who fell in battle, for lovers torn apart by time, for empires that crumbled into dust. The chamber fell utterly still. Some aliens whispered in confusion. Others leaned forward, struck by the rawness in his human voice. But the only reaction Daniel cared about was the one in front of him. Princess Serenya's composure cracked. Her lips parted slightly. Her sapphire eyes widened. She inhaled sharply, as if the melody had pierced armor she had worn since childhood. When Daniel's voice faltered, when he feared he had overstepped, it was Serenya who spoke, her voice trembling yet commanding. "Continue." The word rang out like a command, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Daniel did. He sang until his throat ached, until silence pressed around him like a shield. When the last note faded, the hall did not erupt into applause or outrage. It was simply quiet, heavy with something unspoken. Serenya rose from her throne. "You," she whispered, her voice breaking, "sang in the language of my mother, a hymn only our kind shares." Daniel bowed his head. "I sang it because loss is not just yours, princess. It's ours too." In the days that followed, everything changed. Instead of returning to her war council, Serenya summoned Daniel privately. She questioned him, about humanity's wars, their art, their griefs. Daniel spoke not as a soldier, but as a man who had buried friends, who had seen the cost of every battle, who knew the ache of carrying loss. Each time they met, the barrier between them cracked further. Serenya revealed her own burdens, how her brother had fallen in a raid against humanity, how her people demanded vengeance, how she was expected to carry her empire's rage even when it tore her apart inside. Daniel listened. He did not excuse humanity's bloodshed, nor did he deny her grief. But he offered something no one else had: understanding. And then, one night in the crystalline halls of the Concord, she asked him softly, "Why did you learn our tongue?" Daniel hesitated. "Because I wanted to understand. You can't fear someone once you truly hear them." For the first time, Serenya smiled. Not the cold, regal smile she gave her court, but something fragile, something human in its vulnerability. Climax. The fragile peace was threatened within weeks. Hardliners in the Lithari fleet declared Serenya compromised, accusing her of being swayed by a primitive. They rallied warships at the border, demanding the princess renounce her contact with the human. When she refused, an assassination attempt was made. It was Daniel who saved her, throwing himself between her and a plasma bolt, his shoulder burning as the shot tore past. In the chaos, Serenya's guards dispatched the traitors, but the damage was done. Word spread through the empire. Their princess wept for a human, protected him, even sang with him. The empress herself summoned Serenya back in chains. Daniel begged the council to intervene, but most species stayed silent. Humanity was too small, too weak, to risk war with a juggernaut. Yet Daniel refused to give up. He stood again before the Concord, wounded and weary, and sang once more. This time the song was human, a raw ballad from Earth, filled with defiance and longing, translated hastily into Lithari notes. It was imperfect, flawed, yet it carried his heart. And across the stars, millions listened. Broadcasts spread his voice to the Lithari homeworld, where people who had only known propaganda now heard their mourning hymn mirrored by an alien throat. Something shifted. Ordinary Lithari began to question the war. Some even whispered that perhaps this human understood them more than their own generals. Ending. Serenya stood trial before her mother, accused of betraying her empire's pride. Chains bound her wrists, but her head was held high. When asked for her defense, she did not speak of politics, strategy, or treaties. She spoke of a human who had sung her people's grief, who had risked his life to shield hers, who had shown her that across species and bloodlines, hearts still beat the same rhythm. And then, before the court of her empire, she wept openly, tears not of shame, but of truth. Silence followed. Even the empress, iron-willed and unyielding, could not deny the resonance of her daughter's words. War did not end overnight. Borders remained tense. Fleets still patrolled. But something far greater had taken root. Doubt. A seed of peace where there had only been rage. And for Daniel and Serenya, in the quiet moments between storms, there was something more. A bond born not of treaties or convenience, but of a song shared in the darkest hour. The galaxy would remember the soldier who sang in an alien tongue, and the princess who, through tears, whispered a single word that changed everything. Continue.